Hi, everyone. I had the great pleasure of interviewing Dr. Pat Hopkins about the COVID-19 virus, and the interview got cut off, so what you're about to see is going to be spliced together, but there's so much great information here. Just apologizing in advance for technical issues. But Pat is a rheumatologist. She's the head of the Greater Boston Functional Medicine Group, and she has a lot of insights into this new world that we're entering with trying to keep our bodies healthy, dealing with something that as human beings, we've never seen anything like this before. And she was explaining how I have been talking about moving from a horizontal world into a vertical world, that in order to really heal and treat the body, we are going to have to look to new things. And we're more in a quantum physics universe rather than the old way of doing things. And one of the most important things she says in this interview is that people keep telling me, well, it's just like the flu. I don't know why the media is making such a big deal about it. And she said something that's very important, that the flu you can give to people when you're sick and you know that you've got the flu. With this virus, people can have absolutely no symptoms and give it to many people. And that's super different than any other flu that they've ever seen. And also, a lot of people are losing their sense of taste and smell. There's no flu ever on Earth that's ever had that as a side effect. So she's prepared for us to be having to live with masks and gloves for maybe more than a year. So I hope you enjoy this interview, and please make comments and let me know what you think. Hey, Pat, thank you so much for coming today to talk to me. I think I told you the other day that I'm starting this series of Wayfinders, people who are helping us find our way through this very complicated time. And you're on the leading front edge with this coronavirus. And I know that you understand, as I do, that the way we've been doing things is no longer working. And I just wanted to get your take on the overview from a medical perspective of where we're headed right now and how things have to change.
So we've just literally reviewed all the data as of last night, and we are doing a town hall on my practice site at 4 o'clock today. But I think here are some of the important things that people have to realize. And that is, people say to me, it's just like the flu. Well, guess what? It's not like the flu. It's not seasonal. This disease is happening rampantly in warm, hot, cold, tropical. No one has escaped this virus. So we can't say, oh, well, it'll be like the flu. It'll fade out in March. By the end of April, we kind of don't see the flu anymore. And it doesn't ramp up till next November. So that is an unreal expectation. Second, the flu is contagious when you're symptomatic. This is contagious when you're not symptomatic. And that is one of the problems. And it's 10 times more contagious than the flu. So making all of the assumptions based on what we know about historical viral behavior has to all be tossed out. We are on a learning curve. The second piece that I think is very important is for people to understand the flattening of the curve means you're still at your peak of hospitalizations. You need to be going down by 10, some people say 20% in new diagnoses before you can say time to let's lift social distancing. Let's reopen the economy. Let's reopen what we do. And I think this is a time where everybody really is going to be struggling with how do we redefine how we do business going forward. It is a new era in our life. Who would have predicted it? It's here.
Right.
It was predicted.
Yeah, I did predict it actually.
Yeah,
and
it was
I was
predicted.
saying, last August in my webinar, I said life as we knew it would be over. Like there's something coming that's unlike anything we've ever seen before. And I've been explaining to everybody from an astrological perspective that we're in this paradigm shift, that it's as if we've moved from a flat universe to a round universe. And I think we have to be more integrated with the earth and with the cosmos. I've been talking about moving from this horizontal axis to the vertical. How can you explain this from a medical standpoint in terms of how we're dealing with our bodies? Like our connection with medicine and bodies is going to have to change in order to help heal people. Don't you agree?
So I look at it this way, and this is the flat world, is Newtonian physics. So if the apple falls, I believe in gravity. And I only believe in gravity as I see the apple fall, and the apple is big enough for me to see it. What do we live in? We live in quantum physics, not Newtonian physics. Quantum physics means I flick a switch. I don't know what that filament means, but my room is filled with light. And I accept that the quantum physics is integrated into all of our physical world, meaning that which is around us. And what I think what people have to understand is quantum physics is how our internal organs work. And until you move beyond the MRI scan and a CAT scan, we're medicine stuck in, if I can't see it, you don't have it. And I'm sure every patient has had that experience. When in fact, the most pertinent thing is if you can't see it, you better feel it. The last thing is we don't know if the antibody is going to provide you with ongoing immunity against the next wave. So I want people to think back to the last 40 years, it's just about 45, when Lyme disease, the first spirochete, was described. And eventually we came up with testing that we relied upon. And then we realized after 30 years of investigation that patients can be, that if you vaccinated these patients, it lasted for about 18 months. So you can get reinfected with Lyme every 18 months. And that there was an expansion within the tick world so that we have to deal with 25 different organisms now, when 45 years ago we thought it was one organism. So I think we have to take lessons from Lyme, and that the spirochete world changed, and this is a big change in the viral world.
Wow. So people right now who are discounting this as not a big deal, is there anything else you can tell them to help them realize that this is super serious? Because you're seeing COVID patients all the time, right?
Right. So the problem you have to realize is the flu season happens during the winter. This COVID has hit every single environmental possibility: tropical, rainforest, freezing cold, winter, summer. It's not going to hold steady to a seasonal recurrence. So people are talking about, well, the warm weather's here, let's all go outside. To do that is to ignore actually what's happening around the world.
What do you think is going to happen next? Because you were talking about flattening the curve is not really exactly
that. So flattening the curve is you're at your peak. You want to see the curve come back down.
We haven't come there even close, have we?
We're trying to flatten it. We're trying to say there are, and so part of that problem is this flattening the curve and flattening hospitalization. So while we may see people being tested so that curve will stay high, you have to marry that to hospitalizations. So if hospitalizations are dropping off by 10, 15, 20%, even though you're having more people tested positive, that means you're getting into what I call the healthy pool, and there'll be a certain amount of immunity that will be transmitted because the people that are positive but asymptomatic, you're hoping that the next round they will not become symptomatic. So we want to shrink the burden on the healthcare system. So it's twice as communicable and contagious as the flu season, 10 times the hospitalizations, double the mortality, twice the mortality, so 100% increase in mortality compared to the flu. It is in no way the flu.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're explaining that. What can people do right now if they're trapped at home and they're doing everything they possibly can to avoid contact with anybody, and they're using the mask and the gloves? What can people do to build up their immune system just in case they do get exposed to it?
So there are a few things that have been shown within the herbal world that actually prevent the virus from adhering to the mouth, nose, eyes, lashes. So your face is that's where it's kind of taking place within your own personal transmission. So I actually spray my face after every patient with Hypochlor, which is a hypochlorous acid solution for eyelids and eyelashes. And I
Can you get that from anyone, or does it you have to have a prescription?
No, it's right online. I missed my face, and I know I've just given myself a full bleaching, so to speak, but I've been able to kill all the bacteria that might be caught on my lashes, the front of my hair when I wear a mask, because I don't, cover my whole hair. So you might even miss the top. It's very light. It says for eyelashes.
Can you show the other side of it? Hypochlorite. Okay.
So a few different brands, Hypochlor, the 2 or 3 brands, and I got it online. The other thing I do is the propolis throat spray. This happens to be beekeepers, because echinacea basically has been sold out. So I use the propolis. I use BioPure or beekeepers. And this again has been shown, this is from bees, that if you spray the back of your throat, it actually will inhibit the bacteria from attaching to your mucous membranes. So this is where it pretty much starts.
It doesn't go any other place in the body, right? It's just your nose or your mouth. That's it,
Well,
right?
that's the transmission point. When it gets into the lungs, it actually binds to, you've heard of cilia, which
Yeah.
are the lining of the lungs, the little hairs. So it binds to those and paralyzes those. So all your secretions get stuck. You then have your immune system responding to kind of like people that have polycystic lung disease, cystic fibrosis of the lungs, where they can't clear any of their secretions. So all of a sudden you have this immune storm happening. So people have looked at a few things that need to be discounted. One is obesity is not a risk factor. It is the comorbidities that are a risk factor. So there's been a lot of realization that people that live in crowded housing with poor sanitation, poor diets, they are the ones that are at greatest risk for becoming susceptible and becoming sick. So the more your body's at risk, it's not your weight, it's how much your body is at risk. And how do we make a strong immune system that can sustain this?
Right.
The second biggest risk is being over 60 years old. And I think, personally, being over 60, when on March 13th, when I left the office at 4 o'clock, I said to the staff, we'll see you on Monday, but we'll be gowned, gloved. I have, shields, mask. And by 5 o'clock when I got home, I realized the safest thing to do is actually shut down my entire office for 2 weeks to self-quarantine everyone in the office to make sure none of us were sick. And we've come back and we're seeing patients 1 day a week, and the rest of the week we're doing telemedicine. So it's been a turnaround, and people have to kind of use this time to get healthy. Go out and go forest bathing, go for walks. Hey, what about, you always were thinking about starting a great diet? Do it now. Start cooking. Right. Eat less. Walk more. There are things we can do, and take this time to do them.
What do you think about the fact that they're looking for a vaccine? If they find a vaccine, would you be pro or against that?
So here's the problem. Historically, vaccines have followed the disease peak. So as we know, the flu vaccine, which went to universal vaccinations in 2010, the science isn't supporting that it works to stop it, because since 2010, our hospitalizations and mortalities have increased despite universal vaccination. We deployed 150 million vaccines last year, yet our hospitalizations were quite high. So as you know, the flu has evolved from H1N1 to many different flus. So why would we expect that this virus is not capable? It's a much more complex virus. It's going to be much more difficult to catch. And just like the Lyme vaccine, which came out in 1999 and was off the market in 2 years because they realized we vaccinated against this viral, let's call it patchwork that we found. But that may not be the important one. So how many viral snapshots are you going to take of a virus before you find the right one? So I think what's going to happen is we need to find the right testing, both antibody and viral particles. So both the PCR, which is testing that you have active viral particles in you, and the second one is you've mounted an antibody response. After that, it's going to be tricky. Again, for those reasons that we've already stated, that you're contagious when you don't know it. So how often should you be testing yourself?
Constantly.
Well, it's kind of scary if you think that the antibodies might not last. Nobody even knows once you've mounted antibodies. Well, are they gone in 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, and is this going to start all over again? So there's a lot of research to be done, and we cannot predict the future. We should not be that arrogant.
So you have no idea how we should just expect to be wearing masks and gloves for probably many, many months.
Could be 18 months to 2 years.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Because this thing it's got its own kind of way of operating that we've never seen in human beings before. So it's going to take a while for people to figure out a way to maneuver around this. And what about light? Is there some kind of like light that could kill this thing?
So Leslie and I were actually, who, as you know, works for me, not your Leslie, you, but my Leslie. So Leslie and I have actually been looking at using laser, infrared and red laser, 635 wavelength, and going up to 1350. And we know that lasers can affect viruses. And so we're going to start looking at doing routine lasering of your gums, your tonsils, this area around your mouth, sinuses. We've had great success with people with just chronic sinus and viruses, post-herpetic neuralgias. We've had a lot of success with using the laser. So I'm excited for that. But again, that's not where the money is researching something as old school as light. But I think we have to, at some point, the light will be shown upon it, maybe. We're going to have to incorporate making healthy people. People have also talked about, and we'll be talking about this in 2 weeks with CC Doucette, is the impact we have made on the environment with 5G, 4G. What are we doing to the molecular stability of our own immune system with high exposure? We're all now on the internet all day long. So we know that melanin, so being it's one thing for rays being out in the sun, but inside Chernobyl, they found mushrooms growing that actually eat radioactivity.
They eat it?
Yes, they survive on it. And so maybe the answer in nature is, if something can survive the Chernobyl blast and it's in nature, then there's something in nature that heals itself.
That could help even with this virus. There's got to be something.
Right. It's the answer's in front of us. We're just not seeing it because we're looking the other way. We're looking back down to, the time of Newton. We're not thinking about the time of Einstein.
Right. And as you said, we have to start looking at life from a quantum physics perspective.
Right.
Because that's where the answers for everything are going to be. And that's what's needing to happen more than anything. One last question, then I'll let you go because I know you have patients and you're super busy. But do you think infrared saunas are super useful during this?
So sweating is a detox. So we know that heavy metals in our exposure over our lifetime, lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, the light metal aluminum, which is in everything from your lipstick to your deodorant, those have impacted the way our immune system responds. One way to detox, cilantro, chlorella, these are great detoxifiers, immune supporters, antioxidants, vitamin C. So sweating is good. Now, the data on the light you get from an infrared sauna, probably not. I mean, we use a pretty powerful laser, and we know exactly the distance, the wavelength, the pulsations, and that's not what you're getting. You're getting a light that has a light to it. So I tend to say probably not. If you're talking therapeutically, not that it may not make you feel better, but that's great. But sweat, go for a run, go out in the forest. We want to boost your natural killer cells. Right.
One last thing. I know that you said you knew Dr. Fauci because you're a rheumatologist and so is he. And you spoke very highly of him. And that's a tough job he's got right now, right? Doing this work. And he always seems so youthful and energized. And
Yep.
I think we're lucky to have him in the top point there.
Well, people have no idea his experience in the position. Well, he's been in that position for decades. And you don't keep that job in Washington through many different administrations and political leanings, and it would be a shame if anybody put together the momentum to quote fire Fauci would be the worst thing that could happen at this point in our country. So hopefully everyone will just stand down and start to use some common sense.
Right. Well, thank you so much. That was hugely interesting. I can't wait to share this with everyone. And I'll talk to you soon, I hope, and keep up the good work.
All right. Join us on our town halls.
I will. All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care. All
Okay,
right.
bye.